Hello and welcome to the Paul Green Comedy PaulCast. This is for December 13th, 2024, episode 351. 14 episodes to go until I get to my 365 daily episode goal. This is stand-up comedian, actor, improviser, and dreamer Paul Green coming to you, sharing my journey as I pursue my dreams in the hopes that perhaps you might pursue yours as well. So, I've got a lot to catch you up on. So, I have been in the middle of a incredibly busy week involving a tremendous amount of travel and 7 shows. And it has been a really great week overall. All of the shows so far have gone very well. It's been a lot of fun. I didn't really dive into a corporate show that I had on Thursday. I know I talked a lot about the corporate gig I did Wednesday night, but so this Thursday I had an opportunity to perform at the Phoenix Children's Hospital Finance Department Christmas dinner. And it was an interesting gig for sure. Not a bad gig by any means. That's not where I'm going with this, but it was just a little different. So I booked this gig because another comedian friend of mine who I perform with at JP's Comedy Club works for the Phoenix Children's Hospital. And so, their finance department was looking to have a little like Christmas, get together, a little fancy dinner. It's not a huge department. There was maybe 30 people there. And yeah, so this comedian invited me to come do some stand-up. And so, first of all, the venue that they had this at was this like really posh, modern restaurant. It was so modern, in fact, that the name of the restaurant, how it was spelled on their building, they used the phonetical spelling from like a dictionary. And I'm going to be perfectly frank, I could not figure out what the name of the restaurant was because they're using this phonetic spelling, which has a bunch of backwards E's and, an upside down E in parentheses and apostrophes. And I'm just looking at this and like my brain, it looked like hieroglyphics to me. I'm like, I don't even know what the name of this restaurant is. Like, I literally don't even know. And, so I'm looking at this restaurant name and I'm just going, okay. I don't even know where I am right now. So the restaurant was in a very fancy part of Phoenix, sort of like Midtown Phoenix. And, whatever the name of the restaurant is, then it was like organic, fresh, modern dining or something like that. I don't remember the specifics, but it was like very clearly this restaurant is trying to make it very clear that they are sophisticated and posh and that, this ain't no Chili's Bar and Grill, you know what I mean? This ain't no Applebee's, everybody. So I get to the restaurant and they have this outdoor courtyard area that, has some tables and it has this huge, like decorative centerpiece that was like a, it looked like an old, like wagon or something. I didn't pay that close attention, so I might be doing the thing where I'm actually misremembering what it was. But there was just like this big, huge sort of wagon type, old timey looking, artifact, which just sort of contributed to sort of the rustic mystique of this restaurant, right? And it turns out that the show is going to be in that courtyard. Now, stand-up comedy is a fairly fragile art form, and there are just not very many ideal venues or performance spots for stand-up comedy. And being outside is one of the worst. Now, it's not the worst. I mean, you can do worse than just being outside, and there are ways to make outside at least workable. And and this one was okay. It wasn't the worst outside gig I've done, but it just creates a very different energy and a very different atmosphere. And more so is this courtyard, it's not set up for performance. It's not like there's a stage and like chairs pointing towards the stage. It's like there was sort of these like tables and chairs sort of scattered throughout the courtyard, and none of them were really in any sort of proximity of any sort of stage. So I was pretty much just standing on one end of this sort of courtyard near the entrance to where you enter into the restaurant space. And then, the comedian who put it together set up a speaker and a mic. And then like directly to my left was a long table, and people were sitting at that table, but they were like looking perpendicular to where I was performing. So if you can picture that, I'm staring forward, and there's a table to my left. Sorry, they were staring parallel, not perpendicular. The table was perpendicular to me, and the people sitting at it were staring forward the exact same direction to me. So it's almost more like we were in, this is kind of a bad analogy, but if you just picture like, a military line, like soldiers, lining up for drills, right? So we're all in a line and we're all looking at the same direction, but they were sitting down, right? So they had to like sit down and then like tweak their necks to the right to see me. And then, so there was like some people there, and then there were like a little small group of people standing on the other side of that wagon thing, just kind of standing there. Some people kind of standing off to my left in front of the wagon, but kind of far away. And then there was another table with some chairs that was under like this really fancy sort of canopy, which was more, it was kind of like this wood design. I mean, this whole thing was like very fancy architecture with kind of like a rustic feel. So this canopy was held up by like these two gigantic cross wooden planks, if you can picture that. And these planks were huge. They were probably like 12 by 4. So they were really wide. And and that's what's like holding up this sort of like canopy, like a outside awning almost. And and it was actually kind of hard to see around those wood planks. So I kind of had to like move around so I could make eye contact with the people sitting under that canopy, where then, I got people standing up in front of me, and then I have this other table to the left, right? So just the geography was a little complicated, plus I'm outside, and this restaurant, that canopy was um well, the restaurant itself sat right on Central Avenue in Phoenix, which is a very busy street, and it's also where the light rail goes. So, um, I don't think the light rail came during my set, but JP, who owns the club that I perform at all the time, and how I got this gig, he went right before me, and like right in the middle of a set, bing bing, and this like light rail, starts, doing its little trolley bell or whatever, and and there's just loud cars and loud traffic, which just adds to the distraction of having to do a show outside. So anyway, then it was my turn. Um, the first thing that I did was made fun of the fact that I I don't know what the name of this restaurant is. And then I started like pointing out the big sign on the side of the restaurant, and I just kind of went through it and was just kind of like making fun of it. Um which they didn't like that much. I didn't I felt like they were amused by it, but they weren't like really laughing at it. So I'm like, okay, well, I thought that was hilarious, but for whatever reason, they didn't really think that that was that funny of an observation, or maybe they were just offended that I was insulting the restaurant that they probably paid a lot of money to host their Christmas party. And by the way, more on the name of the restaurant and me calling attention to it later, because it actually comes up after my set. So then the next thing I did was, I knew they were the finance department, and I actually have a degree in finance from ASU. So I started just making jokes about, how I'm also in finance, but I got it from ASU, so I don't know if that counts. And, the only thing my finance, but I'm in comedy, so the only thing my finance degree was let me know what a accurately bad financial decision going into comedy was, stuff like that. And they seem to be, laughing at like that. Okay. Um, so then I went into some of my material, which I don't feel it landed great with the audience. I mean, I think it landed okay. Um, I think, um, Jim, who opened for me, I felt like his, his routine was landing a lot better. His jokes were hitting a lot better. Um, than mine, which, I don't know what to do about that. It's like I can only be as relatable as I can be. So anyway, I just kind of went through my routine, and then I did have my keyboard there. So I had set up my keyboard, and I asked if anybody was, in the audience still believed in love or whatever. I didn't feel like any of the employees' spouses were there. It was just for the employees. So I didn't get to, usually I like to interview a couple and find out their love story. But in this case, it was just, I just asked if anybody believed in love. And there was a woman who raised her hand, and she had been like married 25 years. She still believed in love. So I just talked to her a little bit about her love story, how she met her husband, and she was really fun and had a fun story to tell. And then I improvised a song for her, and that was it. I feel like the people appreciated the comedy. I don't think I killed it. I definitely didn't kill it, but I did okay. I was as interactive with the audience as I could be. I was trying to be very conversational. I was not just trying to just stick to script, do my jokes, and then, leave. Which I don't know. I never know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I have this narrative in my head that says, no, Paul, your jokes should be enough. Like, your jokes should be strong enough to where you can just live and die by your jokes and not have to go off script so much and improvise and riff and all that stuff. And I don't know, maybe that's true, but that's how it went. That's where I'm at with that. Oh, so I finished my set, and right after I get done, the main chef of the event comes out. And one of the first things he does is he kind of uh was a little miffed at me. So he comes out and he just says, wow, that's a tough act to follow. By the way, the name of the restaurant is Perception. The that's the phonetical spelling on the restaurant, but I guess you wouldn't know that if you were public schooled or something like that. So now I'm getting roasted by the head chef. You know, he was trying to be lighthearted, but I did sense a little bit of like, F this kid. I do feel like he was a little kind of like, because that's probably his restaurant, and and again, it's a very posh, elegant thing, and so they're trying to be all sophisticated by using the phonetical spelling instead of just spelling the restaurant Perception. I think it was Perception. I still don't even know. Perception. Perception. I think it was. I think that's actually the name of the restaurant, but for some reason they decided to spell the restaurant using the most complicated way possible, which is the phonetical enunciation guide from the dictionary that's, in parentheses next to the word instead of just calling it what it is. But then he went up and, started explaining, how they do dinner there. And it was all very like, we only source from local farms, and the meat that we source is from local, lamb and cattle farmers, or, like whatever he's saying and stuff. Seemed like a really cool place. I was like, man, I wish I could have dinner. Sounds really good. But, aside from me evidently insulting the chef and his life's work, I think the show went pretty well. Um, so yeah, so then after that, I actually had another show at JP's that night, which ended up being pretty interesting because he initially booked me to feature. So I was planning on doing about 10, 12 minutes or so. And I show up, and it was a really light night in terms of audience. I think maybe 12, 15 people. And so I was just going to kind of show up and, do maybe try some new material or whatever in my 10 minutes and whatnot. But what ended up happening is because the audience was so light, and I guess there were a couple other comics that were booked that ended up not showing. And so the owner, Jim, comes to me and just says, hey, I think I'm going to have you like co-headline. We have a headliner, but, we need like about 30 minutes filled. So would you mind doing like 30 minutes and bringing in your keyboard or whatever and kind of doing your thing? I was like, oh, heck yeah. So I ended up thinking I was going to do a 10-minute set, but I ended up getting to do 30 minutes. And I really had a lot of fun. Small crowds, I'll tell you, every time I've had a small crowd at JP's, which has happened a couple times, they end up being the best show, which just seems so counterintuitive. Because sometimes small crowds are legitimately the worst because, it's like the fewer people that are there, all it takes is for like one of them to be having a bad time, or one of them to be, like not having a good time, or like whatever it is, you know what I mean? And so, if you got 10 people and like two of them are checked out, it's 20% of your audience that, is just going to have a hard, just makes it a hard time, but, but yeah, that wasn't the case with this audience. They were really fun. They were really engaged. I was able just to relax a little bit, which I've really been trying to do. I usually, right before a show, I have some pretty significant nervous energy and some anxiety. I still never really know if I'm funny or not. No matter how long I do this, I'm only as funny as my next gig. It doesn't matter what's happened in the past. If I've ever killed before, it's like, well, this next crowd, they might hate me. And I might fall on my face and whatnot. So ended up having a lot of fun on the Thursday night show doing 30 minutes. And then last night on the 13th, I was headlining the club. And both shows went really, really well. I had a lot of fun. And overall, yeah, the sets went really well. So, oh my gosh, it's already been 20 minutes of me just yapping about myself. I didn't even get into Brene Brown. Okay. Well, I'm going to do this. I'll go ahead and just we'll end today's podcast for now, but tomorrow I promise I will contribute instead of just yapping about myself, and I will do a little bit more discussion about Brene Brown's book, Daring Greatly, which I am enjoying thoroughly, and I think it is just some very significant principles and philosophies that she teaches, which I think will only serve to, make anybody's life just a little bit more fulfilling and a little bit more joyful. It really is just such a powerful book, and obviously she's incredible what she's contributed to the world. So, all right, everybody. I hope you are doing well, that your dreams are coming true. You're having fun experiences out there as you're pursuing them and finding joy and fulfillment in your journey. This is Paul Green with the Paul Green Comedy Podcast. This is for December 13th, 2024, episode 351. I love you all so much. I will talk to you tomorrow.